Imagine a world where every single worker can't wait to get to work. And when they're there, they give 100% of themselves and they love every minute of it. Can you imagine that? Perhaps not, because the reality is that many of us have seen those memes on the internet, right? Me at work on a Friday night. It's Friday night, it's 5 o'clock, and it's time to go home. And suddenly people start dancing through the doors, leaping into the lift, pirouetting through the car park. And why? It's like a scene from Fame the musical. And they are so happy because they get 2 days off work. What's that all about? Just surviving for 5 days out of every 7. Wishing your lives away until the weekend. And why is it that we want to get out of the workplace so quickly? Is it because when we have our free time, we get to spend that with people that care about us? Empathy is defined as the ability to understand the feelings and the emotions of another person. And the Gallup organization has reported that when individuals feel that their supervisor at work cares about them, they're more likely to support their fellow colleagues, they're more likely to come up with new ideas, and they're more likely to share more information. But the thing is, only 40% of people think that their supervisor cares about them at all. So most of the time when we go to work, we are just trying to lie low and stay hidden. Imagine you getting up for work and you zip up what we call your fake persona suit. Any of you worn a suit like that before? You feel like you've got to pretend because you're going into work, right? And I think of this suit as being like one of those old-fashioned suits that the deep-sea divers used to wear. You know, those suits that kind of make them walk like this at the bottom of the ocean. Because it's clumsy, it's cumbersome, gets in your way. It stops you from doing your very best. And when you get home, you're feeling suffocated and stifled, and you can't wait to take it off until the next day when you've got to put it back on again. I used to wear a suit just like that to work because I knew that I had to wear it to fit in and to get ahead. I felt I needed to iron out the kinks and be just like everybody else. But the thing is, we all have our story, don't we? Something that makes us a little bit different from the next person. And it's our story that gives us our individuality and that makes us who we are. What's your story? My story is that as a child, I was fostered. And I was fostered by an elderly white English couple. And I had a very happy and loving upbringing. And it was also very British. Every Saturday night, we would watch Elvis movies on TV. And then when Elvis wasn't on telly, it seemed like Bruce Forsyth inhabited the TV set. And then every single Sunday, without fail, we would have a roast dinner, usually with Brussels sprouts. But by the time I got into the workplace, I realized that it wasn't okay to talk about being fostered, let alone by a family of a different race. Every single time childhood stories came up and I mentioned mine, I'd see this panicked look appear on my colleague's face. And they were basically thinking something like, "Oh my God, that sounds really emotional. Oh my God, I'm frightened. What am I supposed to say?" And what they did end up saying was something like, "Oh, Shola, is it lunchtime already? See you later." And they'd be gone. And so I realized that being different in the workplace was bad. The running commentary in my head went something like, "You were fostered. That makes you different. You're black. That makes you different. Difference isn't good. So lie low, keep a low profile, and maybe no one will notice you." But the thing is, if you imagine an iceberg, right? An iceberg has 10% of itself visible above the water, and 90% is hidden. But imagine you as the iceberg in the workplace, And that hidden 90% contains all the good stuff that they hired you for in the first place. It contains your creativity, your initiative, your productivity. The thing is, we don't need to hide ourselves away like that. If I think of those colleagues, all they needed to have said was something like, "Oh, you were fostered. How was that for you?" They didn't need to have any answers, and they didn't need to be afraid. But it would have been cool if they'd perhaps just been curious and listened. But instead, in the workplace, we stick to those usual safe topics, don't we? Celebrity chit-chat, TV, and of course, sport. Because those topics keep us zipped up inside that fake persona suit, and we don't have to put anything at risk. But what about companies and corporations? What about them? Why should they encourage us to show more emotion in the workplace? Why should they encourage us to be ourselves? Surely it's just a simple equation, which is money in equals productivity out, because we're machines, right? But McKinsey reported that when companies have more diverse senior management teams and diverse boards, they make 35% higher profits than companies that don't have that same diversity. So there's a really good reason for women and diverse groups and minorities to step up and reach those senior positions in the workplace. But on the other hand, there's something else going on, where it's been reported that minorities tend to be scrutinized a lot more in the workplace. And that leads to poor performance. It leads to them ending up sometimes even losing their jobs or being disciplined. So on the one hand, we need more minorities, we need more women to step up and take those senior roles. But organizations need to change so that those people are being encouraged in the first place and not being scrutinized and treated differently. So what's the problem here? The main problem is that people like people who are like themselves, don't they? It's a very human problem. And what that means is that anybody who's in a senior position tends to want to encourage people who are just like them. So it becomes really hard for anyone who's had a different story or a different background to find their seat at the table. Imagine a male executive, and he's got a season ticket, say, to watch Chelsea play every couple of weeks. And he has a female employee working for him. And she has a young son who goes to play soccer at the local pitch every weekend. Now, the two of them might think they're completely different. But if they would only ask a simple question, how was it for you? They may find they've got a lot more in common than they first thought. Because maybe they both watched their team at the weekend and they're both feeling a sensation of pride and joy because their team won. But unless they get beyond the what did you do to the how did it feel, how will they ever get to bond and connect? Because human beings bond on shared emotion. Years ago, I thought I had the job of my dreams. I was hired to be an account director. I was running a team of 12 people. I had a blue chip client on my roster. But 6 months after I took that job, I was fired. And I was fired because I was too quiet during meetings. Now, I'm an introvert. And introverts don't typically tend to be very strong at speaking up spontaneously in group situations. But my employer never bothered to find that out about me. And they didn't bother to learn that I'd been up working often till midnight or till 1 in the morning, trying to skill up for the job and read reports and all that good stuff. And in fact, the only time I remember them asking anything with curiosity about me was during my job interview and then on the day they fired me. And it was a very tough time because a lot of my friends were doing really well. And I ended up cutting people out of my life because I didn't want them to think of me as a failure. And at the same time, I also didn't want to share with my Nigerian parents that I'd been let go from a job. Can you imagine it? Let go? Let go? What does that mean? Do you mean you were fired? My daughter was fired? So that conversation got delayed for a while. But in the meantime, what I decided to do was take my guitar and start singing on the open mic circuit around London. And what I discovered was something really amazing. I learned so much from those audiences. Because instead of them shying away from emotion, they wanted more of it. They were hungry to hear stories. And when I sang about myself and told them stories of things that had happened, they'd be yelling out, "Yeah, me too," or "What happened next?" And I realised that this idea that we shouldn't be showing emotion was rubbish. And that there was something really rotten in the workplace that was encouraging us to be there and to give so much of ourselves without fully showing who we are and fully allowing us to connect with each other. Because it's all very well for companies to have these missions, right? You know, our company mission, our charter is this, etc. And to expect the workers to be like obedient troops following along. But without empathy, without emotion, how can we bond together in the first place? So I have a vision, because these days I work as a communications coach and a professional singer. And I have a vision that in the workplace, why shouldn't more emotion be encouraged? Because that's what allows us to connect with each other. Why should we be asked to check our emotions at the door on a Monday morning or leave them at home? If we are allowed to show more emotion at work, there'd be no more need to be icebergs with only 10% of ourselves floating above and 90% of the good stuff hidden away. There'd be no more need for these fake persona suits where we feel clunky and stifled every day and we can't be ourselves. And unfortunately, there'd be no more need for those crazy memes that we see on the internet with people feeling miserable on Monday and fantastic on a Friday night. So I think you may have heard of Bring Your Kids to Work Day or even Bring Your Dog to Work Day. But I think we should have a new day and we should call it the Bring Yourself to Work Day. But I think it shouldn't be just one day of the year. It should be every single day. Thank you.